The sound of metal tearing through bone was the first thing I heard. Not the brakes, not my own scream, just the blunt, wet crack of something inside me giving up. The steering wheel crushed into my ribs, the airbag exploded too late, and the world went silent except for the hiss of rain slicing through the broken window. I tasted copper before I felt pain. Then it hit all at once, hot, blinding, endless. My leg was twisted at an angle no leg should bend my chest, barely rising, my fingers numb and slick with blood. The car smelled like gasoline and iron and terror. I tried to breathe, but every inhale clawed at my throat. I was 31 years old and dying in a grocery store parking lot, watching my breath fog the last unbroken piece of glass. My phone was on the floorboard, half submerged in a puddle of rain and blood. I dragged it toward me, nails scraping against the metal. My thumb slipped twice before I hit the screen. 911. The dispatcher's voice was steady, too calm. "Ma'am, help is coming. Stay awake." But my mind was already reaching for something else, someone else. "Mom." I switched the call. It rang twice. Then her voice. Sharp. Annoyed. "What is it, Clara? We're in the middle of something." Her words were casual, like I was calling from the kitchen, not a wreck. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. I swallowed, tasting blood, and pushed out the only words I could manage. "Mom, please. I can't breathe." Her sigh came through like static. "Are you dying?" The question hung there cold and absurd. I blinked, disoriented. "What are you dying, Clara?" "Because your sister's heartbroken. Evan left her this morning and she's in pieces. I need to be here for her." My heart stopped for a beat. I could hear faint crying in the background, Lydia's voice, dramatic and familiar. Then my mother, softer now, her tone turning sweet. "She needs me more right now. You're strong. You always have been." She said it like a compliment, like strength was a curse she'd assigned me for life. My vision blurred, lights from the street bleeding into one another. I wanted to tell her that being strong didn't mean being disposable, but I couldn't. My mouth wouldn't move fast enough. "Mom, please," I whispered, my breath catching on the word. She paused just long enough for me to hope she might change her mind. Then she said almost gently, "I'll call you later, sweetheart." And she hung up. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. It was the roar of everything collapsing inward, the sound of abandonment filling the car until there was no space left to breathe. I stared at the phone, glowing dimly in my bloody hand. A part of me waited for it to ring again, for her to say she was joking, that she was on her way. It didn't. Outside, rain kept hammering the roof like it was trying to bury me. I pressed my palm to my chest. The beat there was faint, erratic. Somewhere far off, I heard sirens, thin, distant, almost embarrassed to arrive late. My body shook with every breath. I thought of Lydia's crying in the background. I thought of how my mother's voice softened for her, how it had always softened for her. And I realized something cruel. It wasn't that she didn't love me. It was that she loved my usefulness more. The paramedics' flashlights cut through the rain. Voices shouted. Metal groaned as they forced the door open. "Easy now. Stay with us." I didn't answer. I couldn't. One of them pressed his hand against my shoulder as they lifted me out, and for a moment that touch felt foreign gentle in a way that family never was. The siren screamed as the ambulance pulled away, drowning out everything except the steady beep of a monitor. I stared at the ceiling lights flicking past above me one by one, like stars burning out. My phone buzzed once in my lap, then died. I closed my eyes. Behind the chaos, behind the pain, there was her voice again. "Lydia's fragile. You're strong. Be understanding." That's what she'd said when I was 10, when Lydia cried because I'd gotten a bigger slice of cake. When I was 16 and Lydia wrecked her first car. When I was 28 and paid their mortgage because Dad forgot a payment. It was the family prayer. Be understanding. Even when you're bleeding. Especially when you're bleeding. My body jolted as the ambulance hit a bump. Pain ripped through my leg like fire. I gasped, but the oxygen mask muffled the sound. The medic said something I didn't catch. I stared at the ceiling, blinking hard, and somewhere between the flashing lights and the rhythm of my heartbeat, a truth took shape. It wasn't the crash that broke me. It wasn't the pain or the blood or the silence. It was realizing that the person who gave me life could listen to me dying and still hang up. The first thing I saw when I opened my eyes was the ceiling white fluorescent buzzing like an insect trapped behind glass. I didn't know where I was not at first. My mouth was dry, the kind of dry that feels like sandpaper and regret. My body didn't move. Machines breathed for me in rhythmic mechanical sighs. There was a tube in my arm, another across my face. When I finally turned my head, the motion sent pain ripping through my ribs. I gasped, and that sound, raw animal, pulled a nurse into the room. "Easy, sweetheart," she said softly. Her name tag read Leah Ocampo, RN. She adjusted the IV, her movements smooth and certain. "You were in a car accident. You're safe now. Just try to rest." Safe. The word felt foreign. Safety had always been conditional in my family, earned by silence, lost by asking for help. Leah's voice was calm, and I wanted to believe her, but all I felt was the cold air crawling under the hospital gown, the heaviness of a leg encased in plaster, and the deep ache that no medicine could dull. I turned, slightly searching for someone. My phone was on the tray beside the bed, cracked like it had survived a war. The nurse followed my gaze. "Anyone I can call for you?" she asked gently. I swallowed. My throat burned. "They know," I croaked. I called. She smiled sadly, tucking the blanket higher. "Then they'll be here soon." But they weren't. The hours bled together, day sliding into night. The hallway lights dimming, but never truly dark. Each time footsteps passed, I turned my head toward the door, expecting her face, the tight smile, the perfume that smelled like lilacs and denial. But it was always someone else. A nurse checking vitals, a custodian mopping, a doctor murmuring about insurance. No mother. No sister. My body trembled uncontrollably as another wave of pain hit. Leah returned, saw my expression, and pressed morphine into the IV. "Breathe through it," she said. I did, because what else was there to do? The warmth spread through me. Fake relief that numbed everything except the part of me that still listened for a phone that wouldn't ring. At some point, I drifted in and out of consciousness. I dreamt of headlights and glass of my mother's voice saying, "You're strong," like it was a sentence. When I woke, the morphine was fading and the ache in my chest returned heavier than before. A new nurse came in, checked my chart, and hesitated before asking, "Any family on their way?" "No," I said automatically. Then realizing how pathetic it sounded, I added, "They live out of town." It was a lie, but it felt easier than the truth. They lived 10 minutes away. The nurse nodded politely, pity flickering across her face. "I'll note it down." She left, and the door clicked shut. I stared at it until my eyes blurred. Later, I reached for my phone again, the glass scratching my fingertips. I opened messages. Nothing. No missed calls. No, "How are you?" No, "Are you alive?" But there it was, one new notification from Instagram. Lydia's post. A photo of her curled on the couch, a mug of tea in hand, mascara smudged like war paint. Caption, "Heartbreak hurts, but healing begins with family." Below it, my mother's comment, "My brave girl, always here for you." I read it 3 times before my hand started to shake. My thumb hovered over the heart icon absurdly instinctively, as if I were still programmed to play along. Then I set the phone down and turned my face toward the wall. The morphine pump clicked softly beside me, keeping time like a metronome for pain. Hours later, Leah came back, her eyes kind but tired. She glanced at my untouched dinner tray, cold mashed potatoes, and mystery meat congealed under plastic. "You need to eat," she said. "You'll heal faster." "How long have I been here?" "Almost 30 hours. You're lucky." "The driver who found you said another car didn't stop." I nodded weakly. Lucky. That word again. "Anyone coming to pick you up when you're discharged?" she asked carefully. I stared at the heart monitor, its steady blip mocking me. "No," I whispered. "They're busy." She hesitated, then reached out and squeezed my hand. Her touch was warm, grounding. "You're not alone right now," she said. And I almost believed her. When she left, the silence filled the room again. I watched the ceiling lights hum and flicker. Somewhere in another room, a child laughed. Somewhere else, someone cried out for help. But in my room, there was only the sound of machines pretending to care. That night, when I finally closed my eyes, I saw her face again. Not the version that smiled for Christmas photos, but the one that hung up on me while I bled. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder why. I knew. Because in this family, love had always been triage, and I'd never been the emergency worth answering. The morphine dreams blurred into memory, and memory blurred into something worse, clarity. I wasn't just lying in a hospital bed. I was lying in a pattern that had started decades ago, long before the crash, before the blood, before I learned that silence was safer than truth. I was 10 the first time I realized what being invisible felt like. It was a spring Saturday, and the house smelled like frosting and lemon cleaner. My birthday. I remember the cake-white icing blue candles, my name written in shaky cursive. I was waiting for the cue to blow them out when Lydia started to cry. She didn't fall. She didn't get hurt. She just saw my name on the cake and burst into tears because it wasn't hers. Mom rushed to her, instantly scooping her up as if she'd been shot. "Oh, sweetie, it's okay. Don't cry," she cooed, rocking her like a porcelain doll. Then she looked at me, calm but firm. "Clara, be understanding. She's sensitive." The candles melted untouched. The photos that year show a half-eaten cake, no candles lit, and Lydia in Mom's arms. I was smiling, though. I always smiled. That was my job, to absorb the discomfort so nobody else had to feel it. When I was 16, Lydia got her first car, a silver Civic that Dad bought with money he said came from family savings. It was the savings account I'd been contributing to since I started babysitting. A week later, she crashed it into a fence. I told the truth because I thought honesty mattered. Mom's response: "Clara, don't make things worse." She's already shaken. Lydia got another car before the month was over. I got the silent treatment for being harsh. At 20, I won a regional scholarship for graphic design, first in my family, to earn something on merit. I called home, shaking with pride. Lydia answered. "Oh," she said flatly. "That's nice. Mom's helping me with a breakup right now. Can she call you later?" She never did. I learned to stop expecting applause, to stop needing witnesses. I graduated quietly with honors while Mom and Lydia took a self-care weekend in Palm Springs. They sent a card 2 weeks later. No signature, just a Hallmark platitude. "So proud of you, sweetheart. When I was 23, Dad got sick. Nothing fatal, just something expensive. Mom called me late one night. 'You're doing well, right? You can help, can't you?' I wired the money the next morning. She didn't even need to say thank you. I knew she thought gratitude was redundant when the duty was obvious. That same year, Lydia decided to move into an artist loft downtown. She couldn't afford it, of course, so Mom called again. "Just a little help until she gets settled. You know how fragile she is." Fragile. The word was a religion in our house. Lydia was the altar. We all paid our tithes. I covered her deposit, then her first month's rent. I watched my savings shrink and told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. Years blurred together money and silence out. Holidays where Lydia's moods dictated everything. Christmas dinners canceled because Lydia's not in a good headspace. Birthdays that turned into therapy sessions about her heartbreaks. Even my promotion went unnoticed. I remember calling Mom to tell her. She interrupted halfway through. "That's wonderful, honey. Could you help your sister with her taxes? She's so overwhelmed." I said yes, of course. Saying no felt unnatural, like defying gravity. The truth is, I was conditioned for compliance. Every act of giving was rewarded with distance. Every boundary was punished with guilt. It wasn't love, it was a transaction wrapped in sentiment. And I paid, over and over. When I turned 30, I tried one more time to bridge the gap. I invited them for dinner, homemade pasta, candles, the works. Mom spent the whole night talking about Lydia's upcoming art show, a hobby she'd started 2 months earlier. Lydia spent it complaining about how her ex didn't support her creativity. When I tried to talk about my new apartment, Mom smiled tightly. "You don't have to compete, Clara. You're already stable." Stable. That was her word for me. It meant emotionless, unworthy of care. That night after they left, I found a note under my napkin in Lydia's handwriting. "Thanks for dinner. Sorry if Mom's a little much. She just worries about me more. I kept that note for years, proof that she knew exactly how the game worked. In the months before the crash, the pattern was so normal I didn't even recognize it as abuse. Lydia called almost every week, her tone syrupy sweet. Hey, could you send me $200 just till Friday? Hey, can I use your Amazon login? Mine's maxed. Hey, could you sign this form? It's just for the lease renewal. That last one was the signature she copied, the same one I'd later find on the property transfer documents. I'd handed her the pen that erased me. I thought about that as I lay in the hospital bed, machines breathing for me, my leg throbbing in plaster. I wasn't surprised she didn't come, or that Mom didn't. They'd trained me to expect absence. What did surprise me was how quiet my mind felt now that I'd stopped making excuses for them. For the first time, the pattern was visible, clear, sharp, and undeniable. Every memory aligned into a timeline of sacrifice that no one had ever asked me to make out loud. I'd just been born into it. I stared at the ceiling and imagined the blue frosting of that childhood cake, untouched candles dripping wax like slow tears. That was the first moment I'd learned the rule in this family: love was rationed, and Lydia always ate first. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped in rhythm with my thoughts. For 31 years, I'd mistaken endurance for strength, silence for loyalty, giving for love. But lying there under the hum of hospital lights, I finally understood the truth. I wasn't the strong one. I was the scapegoat they'd convinced to stay quiet. And the worst part, I'd been too loyal to notice I was bleeding long before the crash ever drew blood. The next morning, sunlight sliced through the blinds in sharp, deliberate lines. It felt too clean for what I was about to see. The nurse had removed my IVs, taped my arm, and left me with a stack of discharge papers I barely glanced at. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and burnt coffee. I asked for my phone the second I was alone. It was cracked straight down the middle, spiderwebbing across the screen, but it still lit up. I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for proof. The first place I went wasn't messages or calls. It was my banking app. My thumb hovered over the screen as it loaded slow and glitchy. The numbers blurred, then they cleared. Transaction after transaction scrolled past $600 to Mom emergency home repair, $450 to Lydia mental health support, $1 $200 to Mom again utilities mix-up. Each one labeled with lies I'd told myself. None of them paid back. My chest tightened. I scrolled further. The most recent transfer was from 2 weeks before the crash, $3,500 labeled property tax advance. I remembered Mom's voice over the phone, honeyed and urgent. You'll get it back soon, sweetheart. You're better with money than we are. My finger hovered over the entry. There was no refund. No, thank you. I exited the app and opened my email. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of dread. The inbox was a graveyard of urgent subject lines from Lydia and Mom. Need your help, ASAP. Can you sign this form? I messed up my credit card again. Please don't tell Dad. I scrolled until I hit the one that mattered, though I didn't know it yet. Subject signature request. I opened it. The document was attached through a shared drive link titled Weston Family Home Transfer.pdf. My stomach turned. I clicked anyway. The PDF opened. My eyes skimmed at first, not understanding. Then I saw it, my name right next to Mom's, listed as co-owner of the family house. But something about it was wrong. The font looked different. The date, April 10th, 2024, was a day I'd been in Seattle presenting a campaign. The signature at the bottom mine. Only it wasn't. It was perfect. Too perfect. A digital forgery. My full name copied and pasted from a previous form. My pulse hammered so hard I felt it in my leg cast. I scrolled further. A notarized line, blank. Then a second signature, Lydia Weston, recipient of property transfer. I blinked, breath catching. They had transferred the house, the same house I'd been paying taxes on for 3 years, entirely to Lydia, using my signature. My mind flashed through old conversations like a deck of cards. We'll all share it equally, Mom had said. This home is our anchor. You handle the bills, Clara, Lydia had added. You're the organized one. And I had, month after month. Quietly. Efficiently. believing I was protecting something we all owned. I stared at the screen until my reflection blurred behind the text. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the phone. My body was healing, but my world was breaking open in slow motion. I checked the drive's metadata next. Modified by Vera Weston. Date June 2nd, 2024. The same week I'd been in the hospital after working 80-hour weeks on a project launch. They hadn't even tried to hide it. I clicked out and scrolled further through the drive, the one we all shared for family records, tax returns, utility bills, medical forms. It was all there. And there, tucked between old insurance statements, was another file labeled Final, Weston Estate, 2024.pdf. My heart thudded so loud I thought the nurses outside might hear. I opened it. My name wasn't there. Not even once. Under heirs it read, Lydia Weston, primary beneficiary. I scrolled down, numb. Page 4. Executor. Vera Weston. No mention of Clara Weston. Not even in the acknowledgments. They'd written me out of existence. I laughed a sound that didn't sound like me. A sharp, breathless laugh that turned into a sob halfway through. The kind of sound you make when reality stops making sense. I wanted to scream, but the hospital walls felt too clean for rage. I hit download anyway, then screenshots. One by one. My shaking hands fumbled the phone, but I didn't stop until I'd saved everything to my work email to my cloud to a hidden folder. Then, for reasons I can't explain, I opened Instagram again. Lydia had posted another story, a photo of her painting the same room I used to pay rent for. Caption, grateful for the peace of home. Some of us deserve soft places to land. And beneath it, a heart emoji from Mom. I felt something inside me fracture. It wasn't shock anymore. It was clarity, a cold, precise understanding that this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. They had waited until I was busy, until I was tired, until I stopped asking questions. They'd built their comfort on my competence. And when I finally broke, literally broke, they hung up and moved on. I pressed my thumb to the cracked screen, staring at my mother's name beside a digital signature. It wasn't the first time she'd stolen from me, but it was the first time she'd left fingerprints. Outside, a nurse laughed faintly at something in the hall, a sound that didn't belong in this moment. I turned my face toward the window, toward the faint reflection of myself in the glass. The rain had stopped. The street outside glowed with the kind of light that only comes after damage, and I whispered to no one. They didn't just hang up. They erased me. The words hung there fragile but true. Then I reached for my phone again, opened a new message, and typed the name that would change everything. Denise Hall, attorney. 3 days later, I stood in front of the Weston house, white siding, perfect hedges, wind chimes, singing like nothing was wrong. I leaned on my crutch, the ache in my leg pulsing with every heartbeat. The sky was heavy with clouds, the kind of gray that warned rain was coming. I wasn't ready, not really, but I was done waiting for permission to be angry. Through the window, I saw Lydia on the couch, a tissue box beside her, and a dramatic blanket wrapped around her shoulders. My mother, Vera, sat next to her, rubbing her back with one hand and scrolling her phone with the other. I didn't knock softly. I hit the door 3 times until the sound cut through their bubble. Vera opened the door halfway, her expression instantly tightening. Clara? You should have called. You're still on crutches. You shouldn't be out like this. I needed to talk to you, I said, my voice flat. It can't wait. She stepped aside reluctantly. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and lies. Everything was too clean, too staged, too calm. Lydia looked up from the couch, eyes puffy but calculating. You look awful, she said softly. You should be resting. Funny, I replied. That's what I thought you'd be saying 3 nights ago when I called from the ER. Mom's eyes narrowed. Clara, please, not this again. It was a terrible night. We were all emotional. Lydia was in crisis, and I was bleeding in a car. I snapped. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Mom's tone shifted instantly to that calm, professional voice she used when she wanted control. You're overreacting. I told you we didn't know how serious it was. You asked if I was dying, I said. You didn't even ask where I was." Her lips pressed into a tight line. "We can't change what's done. What matters is you're fine now." "I'm not fine," I said quietly. "And neither are you." I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it on the coffee table. Lydia's posture stiffened immediately. "What's that proof?" I said. "Bank transfers, digital signatures, the property transfer you both signed using my name." Vera didn't even flinch. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You took my name off the family trust. You forged my authorization and transferred the house to Lydia." Lydia sat up, color draining from her face. "Wait, what, Mom? That's not—" "Clara," Vera interrupted smoothly. "You're confused. You were medicated. You've been under stress. Maybe you don't remember giving permission. You're gaslighting me," I said, my voice steady but low. "You did it behind my back." "That's a serious accusation," she said, her voice cool. "And if you weren't my daughter, I'd be offended." I took a step closer, the crutch clicking against the floor. "Then, be offended." Lydia started to cry, the practiced kind, soft and pitiful. "I didn't know, Clara. Mom said it was temporary, just paperwork. She said you'd agreed." "Of course she did," I said. "That's how she's always used me, one lie at a time." Mom crossed her arms, exhaling sharply. "Enough. You've had a traumatic experience, and now you're looking for someone to blame. We were trying to protect the family assets, that's all. Lydia's stability is fragile right now. She needs the house. You're independent. You don't need it." My laugh was hollow. "So you stole it because I'm responsible." "We didn't steal anything," she said sharply. "We redistributed, for the family's good. You forged my name." "Mom, we corrected an imbalance. You stole my home. We gave your sister a chance to heal." Each line was worse than the last. My pulse thudded in my ears. "You think that's compassion? That's control." "You've always been dramatic," she hissed. "Everything's an attack to you." "No," I said quietly. "It's finally a boundary." For the first time, her composure cracked. Her eyes flashed with something fear maybe, or rage. "Don't threaten me, Clara. You don't know what you're talking about." "Actually," I said, reaching into my pocket. "I do." I tapped my phone screen. A voice filled the room, my own broken and gasping from the ER recording. "Please, I can't breathe." Then her voice followed, calm, cold, unmistakable. "Are you dying because your sister's heartbroken?" The sound hung in the air like smoke. Lydia's tears stopped midstream. Mom's face went still pale as porcelain. I let the silence sit. Then I turned off the phone and said softly, "That's who you are. Not just who you were in that moment, who you've always been." Vera tried to speak, but the words failed her. Lydia stared at her lap, her hands shaking. I picked up my folder and turned toward the door. "I'll give you both time to think about what comes next," I said. "Because this isn't over." Clara Lydia's voice cracked. "Please, can we fix this?" "You can't fix a lie," I said without turning back. "You can only confess it." The door slammed behind me harder than I intended. My crutch slipped slightly on the porch, but I caught myself before I fell. My leg throbbed, my chest burned, but for the first time the air outside felt cleaner. Behind me, I could hear my mother's voice, sharp hissing through the walls. "Don't make this worse, Lydia. She's just confused. We'll handle it." I almost laughed. The words sounded so familiar. They'd been handling me my whole life, but this time they wouldn't. The night after the confrontation, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the living room, the way my mother's face hardened like marble, the way Lydia's tears stopped the second she realized the recording existed. I sat at my kitchen table long after midnight, the folder open beside a mug of untouched tea. Outside, the Portland rain returned steady and patient, drumming against the windows like a metronome for revenge. My phone buzzed once, a text from an unknown number. "This is Nurse Leah. You left your pain meds in the drawer. Also, I found something you might want." 10 minutes later, she was at my door, still in her scrubs, her hair damp from the rain. She held up a small flash drive. "Before you ask, it's not illegal," she said with a wry smile. Hospitals automatically record incoming patient calls to the ER switchboard. The night of your accident, you called in before dispatch reached you. The log caught everything. My breath caught. Everything. She nodded. Your side of the call. The paramedics said they heard part of it too. You sounded terrified. I swallowed hard. She hung up on me. Then make her listen, Leah said simply. She set the flash drive on the table and looked at me, her eyes sharp but kind. You can file a complaint through patient advocacy, but if this is about more than that, you'll need legal help. Someone who knows how to make people like your mom uncomfortable. I smiled faintly. You sound like you have someone in mind. Denise Hall, she said without hesitation. She used to be our hospital's legal counsel. Sharp as hell. Doesn't blink when people cry. Denise's office was in an old brick building on Burnside, tucked between a florist and a locksmith. Her receptionist led me in with a glance that said she'd seen this kind of pain before. Denise stood as I entered, a woman in her 40s with silver streaks in her dark hair and a gaze that could cut glass. Ms. Weston, she said, shaking my hand firmly. You said your family forged documents. Tell me everything. Her tone wasn't pitying, it was procedural, like she was taking a deposition. I liked that. I laid the flash drive, my phone, and the printed documents on her desk. She examined each page without comment, flipping with mechanical precision. You've got timestamps, digital metadata, financial transactions, and an audio recording that establishes motive and emotional neglect, she said after a moment. You're not imagining things. You're sitting on a solid case of identity fraud and coercion. The word coercion made my stomach twist. So, it's real. It's not just me being dramatic. Denise's lips curved slightly. People like your mother depend on that exact fear. They make you doubt your own evidence. But paper doesn't lie, Clara. Evidence doesn't blink. She opened a new folder on her computer and started typing. We'll begin with revocation of financial authorizations. I'll freeze any account where your name overlaps with theirs. Then, we'll file a formal notice of identity misuse with the county recorder. The property transfer alone is enough to launch a civil suit. How long will it take? I asked quietly. Not long, she said. People like your mother don't prepare for consequences. They build comfort on compliance. Once you stop being quiet, the whole structure shakes. Her certainty felt like oxygen. For the first time since the crash, I sat up straight without wincing. We'll need witnesses, Denise added. Someone who can confirm the emotional manipulation the call from the ER may be prior financial pressure. I nodded. Leah can testify. She heard the recording. And I have years of transfers saved. Screenshots. Texts. Perfect. She leaned back, eyes glinting. Then this isn't just about recovering what they took. It's about establishing pattern. When we present this, I don't want them to look cruel. I want them to look predictable. The way she said it, steady surgical, made something click in me. My anger sharpened into focus. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was strategy. She slid a sheet across the desk. Sign here to authorize representation. I signed. My hand didn't shake. One more thing, she said, voice softening. When this moves forward, they'll try to guilt you. Your mother will say you're destroying the family. Your sister will cry. Don't mistake noise for remorse. I won't, I said. Denise smiled faintly. Good. Let's make them regret underestimating you. That night, I uploaded every file I had into a private drive. Bank records, PDFs, messages, photos of old checks with my handwriting on the memo lines, rent repairs, Lydia's therapist, each one a relic of my silence. When it was done, I renamed the folder For Court, Weston Case. It felt like lighting a match. I poured myself tea, the same chamomile Leah had brought to my hospital room, and watched the rain slide down the window in steady lines. My reflection stared back, pale, tired, but unflinching. For years, I'd built their comfort. Tonight, I built my case. The rain outside didn't let up, but this time it didn't sound like sorrow. It sounded like something else entirely: momentum. The following Sunday, my phone buzzed nonstop before sunrise. Mom's messages flooded in like nothing had happened. Family brunch at noon. Everyone's coming. We're using your kitchen. It's tradition. Be on time. I stared at the screen, disbelief curling into something darker. Tradition. That was her favorite word. Tradition meant I cooked, paid, smiled, and stayed quiet. Tradition meant pretending we were the picture of love while they bled me dry behind closed doors. I didn't respond. I just showed up because some traditions need ending in public. By noon, the apartment smelled of rosemary chicken and champagne. The caterers Lydia hired moved around like ghosts, polite and detached. My home, my lease, my Wi-Fi, my furniture had been transformed into their stage. Lydia floated in wearing soft pink, her arm looped through a man's I didn't recognize. Clara, she sang like we were best friends. You look radiant. You finally brushed your hair. Mom beamed beside her, a queen surveying her kingdom. Let's all have a beautiful, calm afternoon. We're family. That's what matters. I said nothing. I didn't trust my voice not to crack open the room. Relatives I hadn't seen in years hovered near the buffet. One leaned toward Mom and whispered Vera the apartment's stunning. You really made it your own. Mom smiled. Thank you, dear. It's been such a sanctuary for Lydia during her healing. My jaw tightened. The apartment I paid for, the space where I bled, cried recovered, and she'd turned it into a prop for Lydia's redemption arc. Someone clinked a glass. A toast Mom declared, raising her flute. To family, to healing, and to second chances. Lydia's art residency starts next month, and I couldn't be prouder. Applause scattered around the room. Lydia smiled demurely, soaking it in. I wouldn't have made it through this year without my family, she said sweetly. Especially Mom, who's given me everything. Everything. The word stuck like glass in my throat. I set my glass down. You forgot something I said. My voice was calm, steady. You forgot who paid for everything. The room froze. Mom blinked. Clara, let's not do this here. No, I said. Let's tell the truth while everyone's listening for once. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and tapped play. A familiar sound filled the room, my broken voice from the ER, small and desperate. Please, I can't breathe. Then my mother's voice followed, clear and cutting. Are you dying because your sister's heartbroken? She needs me. The silence that followed wasn't silence. It was oxygen leaving the room. Lydia went pale, her wineglass trembling. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. I let the recording play to the end, then stopped it. My pulse was steady now. That I said is who you are when no one's watching. A murmur rippled through the relatives' confusion and pity colliding. Someone whispered. She said that. To her own daughter. Mom recovered fast, she always did. Clara, this is cruel. That call was taken out of context. You were confused, delirious. Really, I pulled a document from my bag and dropped it onto the table. Was I also delirious when you forged my signature on the property transfer? The paper slid across the table, catching the light. Lydia stared at them as if they might vanish. Mom's voice cracked like glass. Where did you get that? The same place you hid the truth, I said quietly. In plain sight. No one moved. Someone coughed. The rain outside started again, faint but relentless, tapping against the windows like an audience that didn't want to miss a word. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. You didn't just forget me. You erased me. And the only reason you're shocked right now is because for once you don't control the narrative. Mom's hands trembled on her champagne flute. You've lost your mind. No, I said. I finally found it. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and stepped away from the table. Enjoy the meal, I added. It's the last thing you'll host in my name. As I walked towards the door, the sound behind me fractured chairs, scraping whispers, hissing. Lydia's sob breaking into air. But I didn't look back. Because this wasn't the end of a brunch. It was the beginning of their reckoning. By Monday morning, the video had been uploaded, unlisted, timestamped, and attached to the legal complaint Denise filed under Weston vs. Weston et al. It wasn't for social media, it was evidence. Cold, precise, irrefutable. Denise stood beside me in the courthouse hallway, flipping through a slim binder labeled Case File Number 240317. Her demeanor was calm, almost surgical. They'll try to settle, she said. Expect tears, apologies. Guilt trips the full theater. Don't react. I nodded, the nerves tightening in my stomach like wire. What if they deny everything? They can't, she said simply. You have timestamps metadata and that recording. That call alone qualifies as reckless endangerment, emotional abuse with quantifiable harm. Judges don't ignore that. The doors opened. We stepped inside. The air was cold and sterile, the kind of chill that makes truth feel heavier. On the left sat my mother Vera, perfectly composed in a navy suit. Lydia beside her mascara already smudging. Their lawyer, a tall man in an expensive gray jacket, stood between them like a shield. Across the aisle, I sat with Denise, my crutch leaning against the bench, my body still aching from the crash. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and unreadable eyes, called the session to order. Case number 24-0317, Weston versus Weston. Plaintiff, Clara Weston. Defendants, Vera and Lydia Weston. Hearing our names read like that line by line was surreal. A lifetime of hierarchy stripped to legal terms. Denise rose first. Your Honor, this is a case of long-term financial exploitation and identity misuse, culminating in the illegal transfer of property and emotional negligence that directly endangered my client's life. Vera's lawyer stood next. Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding. The plaintiff suffered trauma and is misinterpreting documents signed in good faith. Denise didn't even look at him. If it was good faith, she said, why forge a signature? He opened his mouth, but she was already clicking the remote. The courtroom screen lit up my mother's forged PDF on one side, my verified digital signature record on the other. 2 signatures side by side, the differences glaring. Then Denise pressed play on the audio file. The judge's face didn't move as the recording filled the room. My ragged breathing, my mother's detached voice. Are you dying because your sister's heartbroken? She needs me. The sound bounced off the marble walls. Even the clerk stopped typing. Vera's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. That, Your Honor, that was a private family moment. It has no bearing on— It shows pattern, the judge interrupted. Continue, Ms. Hall. Denise didn't waste a word. The defendants forged my client's authorization to transfer a jointly owned property. They used her finances under false pretenses and, when confronted, attempted to gaslight her into silence. These are not family squabbles. These are crimes. Lydia began crying softly, whispering to their lawyer. Vera sat rigid, her jaw tight, but her eyes darted toward the screen, her composure cracking at the edges. When it was my turn to speak, my throat was dry, but I forced the words out steady. I didn't come here to destroy my family. I came here to stop pretending this is one. The judge leaned forward slightly. Ms. Weston, did you suffer physical harm related to the neglect you described? Yes, I said. When I called her from the ER, she hung up. That call is why I waited so long before reaching 911 again. I lost half a liter of blood before paramedics found me. The judge's pen froze mid-note. Denise handed over the hospital report. Confirmed through emergency logs and testimony from medical staff. Silence. Then the judge exhaled. I've heard enough. She turned to Vera and Lydia. Do either of you contest these exhibits? Vera's lips parted, but no words came. Lydia stared at the table shoulders, shaking. Then my ruling stands, the judge said. The property transfer is nullified effective immediately. The court orders restitution of all funds misappropriated from the plaintiff over the past 7 years, plus damages for emotional distress. Additionally, the court finds sufficient evidence to refer the forgery to the district attorney's office for criminal review. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. My mother finally spoke low, sharp, trembling. You're ruining your family's name, Clara. I met her eyes for the first time that day. You did that yourself. The judge struck her gavel once. Case adjourned. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and shining. Denise walked beside me, flipping her umbrella closed. You did well, she said. Calm, factual, controlled. That's what wins. I nodded, still numb. What happens next? They'll fight the restitution, she said, but the criminal review will terrify them. People like your mother control is their currency. Losing it is worse than prison. I looked down at the courthouse steps, the city lights reflected in puddles. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about how to fix them. I was thinking about how to rebuild myself. Denise paused at her car door. One more thing, she said. If they contact you, don't respond. Let the law speak now. I smiled faintly. The law doesn't hang up mid-sentence. She grinned. Exactly. As her car pulled away, I stood alone on the courthouse steps, breathing in air that finally felt clean. My mother had always taught me that silence was strength, but I'd learned something better. Silence without justice is submission. And I wasn't silent anymore. The verdict spread through the family like wildfire. Within 48 hours, every relative who'd once ignored my calls had something to say. My aunt left a voicemail whispering, I always knew Vera went too far, but you didn't have to humiliate her in court. My cousin wrote under Lydia's latest post, "Hard to paint with stolen money, huh?" The facade cracked fast, and when golden reputations fall, they fall loud. Lydia deleted her social media within a day. Mom didn't. She doubled down, of course. Her Facebook post read like a manifesto. Family is built on forgiveness. Some wounds shouldn't be weaponized. She tagged me. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. Denise handled the next step. She drafted the public notice for the county clerk's website property title reverted to original co-owner Clara Weston per court order. The link circulated faster than any family rumor. Then came the press calls. A local station had picked up the story after a clerk leaked the court audio, specifically the line, "Are you dying because your sister's heartbroken?" It went viral overnight. There it was, stripped of context, looping under the headline, "Mother ignores daughter's ER call, loses home in court." I didn't ask for attention, but attention arrived anyway. By Thursday, reporters camped outside the house. Mom tried to play martyr for the cameras weeping on the porch, while Lydia stood behind her wrapped in that same pink blanket like armor. "We love Clara," she told them. "She's just confused. Therapy will help." Denise called me that afternoon. "Don't engage. Let them drown in their own narrative," she said. I followed her advice. Silence became my weapon now, not my cage. Still, the guilt hit hard when I saw Lydia's name trending. A part of me, the part they trained, whispered that maybe I'd gone too far. But then I remembered lying in that twisted car, hearing Mom hang up mid-breath, and the guilt turned to clarity. That night, Leah dropped by unannounced. She brought soup, the same kind from the hospital cafeteria. "Thought you might be forgetting to eat," she said, kicking off her shoes. She watched the news footage with me, shaking her head. "You know," she said softly, "sometimes justice looks messy because truth finally gets a microphone." I smiled weakly. It's still surreal. She leaned back. "Surreal doesn't mean wrong. You just broke a generational pattern. That's not quiet work." By the following week, everything they'd built on image began to collapse. Lydia's art residency revoked her invitation after donors pulled out. The gallery issued a bland statement about integrity and due diligence. Mom's HOA board, the one she'd chaired for 12 years, voted her out unanimously. Denise emailed the restitution confirmation on Friday, a $142,000 transferred to a secured account in my name. "They wired it in full," she wrote. Fear works faster than guilt. I stared at the number for a long time. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. But the biggest shock came 2 days later when an envelope arrived by courier. No return address, just my name in Mom's handwriting, inside a single photograph. It was from that 10th birthday, the one where Lydia cried over my cake. In the photo, Mom's holding her, not me. I'm in the background, candles melted, smile forced. On the back, she'd written, "You always were the strong one." Maybe that was my mistake. I didn't cry. I folded the picture and set it in the drawer with the court documents, not as forgiveness, as evidence of evolution, because strength wasn't the mistake. Her mistake was believing it meant I'd never fight back. Sunday evening, Leah came over again. We sat on the balcony, city lights flickering like new constellations. She asked quietly, "If she called tonight, would you answer?" I thought about it, the familiar ringtone, the rehearsed apology, the endless cycle of need and guilt. Then I shook my head. "No," I said, "because I don't pick up calls from ghosts." Leah smiled, her eyes shining. "Then you're finally living." Down below, thunder rumbled again, but this time it didn't sound like danger. It sounded like distance, everything toxic moving further away. I looked out over the wet streets, the neon reflection of a city that no longer felt small. Somewhere inside, I could still hear that last line from court. The law doesn't hang up mid-sentence. And for the first time in my life, neither did I. 2 weeks later, an unexpected knock broke the rhythm of my new, quiet life. It was evening, the hour when the city dimmed, but my mind was clearest. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I saw her. Lydia. Her face was pale, her mascara-streaked eyes red from crying. She looked smaller somehow, not in height, but in certainty. "Clara," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Please, can we talk?" I didn't answer. I stepped aside, just far enough to let the rain-laced air cut between us. "You have 3 minutes." She hesitated, clutching the strap of her purse. I didn't know Mom forged your name. I swear I didn't. She told me you'd agreed to help again. I believed her because that's what she always said. You'd fix it. Of course, I said dryly. I was always the cleanup crew. Tears welled up, but I'd seen them before, how they came in waves right before manipulation. You have to believe me, she pleaded. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I've lost everything. My residency, my gallery, my reputation. I cut her off. You mean your spotlight. You didn't lose everything. You still have a mother who will defend you until her last breath. You still have people who'll rush to your side the moment you cry. You just lost me. And that's what's breaking you. She flinched like I'd slapped her. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't come for pity, she said after a beat quieter now. I came because I need to understand. How did you stop caring? My throat tightened, but I answered anyway. You don't stop caring. You just get tired of bleeding for people who mistake your pulse for a resource. She swallowed hard, nodding slowly, as if the truth physically hurt to digest. Mom says you'll regret this, that you're letting outsiders poison you against family. I met her eyes. The only poison I've ever had to detox from was family. Her lip quivered, but this time no tears came. Just silence, heavy final. I should go, she whispered, stepping back. Lydia, I said, and she froze at the doorway. If you want redemption, start by telling the truth. Not to me, to yourself. She didn't look back as she walked away, her figure dissolving into the drizzle. The next morning, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. It was the local news desk. Ms. Weston, we're doing a follow-up piece. Would you like to comment on the case now that it's closed? No, I said, but you can print one line. Silence isn't forgiveness, it's closure. They did, and that one sentence, 10 words spread faster than any court headline. By Friday, I received an email from a women's advocacy foundation. They'd read about the case and wanted to feature my story in their legal reform campaign. I hesitated at first, but then I thought about every woman who'd ever been told she was too strong to need help. Every daughter erased in favor of a fragile sibling. Every emergency brushed aside for someone else's drama. I said yes. A month later, I stood in a small community center in downtown Portland, wearing a navy blazer that still smelled faintly of rain. The banner above me read, "When silence hurts, recognizing emotional neglect as abuse." Leah sat in the front row, smiling proudly. Denise was there too, leaning against the back wall, arms crossed, a quiet guardian as always. I took the microphone. I used to think strength meant endurance, I began. That being the one who never broke made me virtuous. But strength without boundaries isn't virtue, it's self-erasure. A ripple of nods moved through the crowd faces of all ages, each one holding their own secret version of my story. I called from the ER once I continued softly. Bleeding, scared, begging for help. My mother asked if I was dying. When I said no, she hung up. That's what neglect looks like. It sounds calm, polite, dismissive. It wears love's vocabulary but speaks in abandonment. Silence filled the room, but this time it wasn't empty. It was witness. I paused, then smiled faintly. But here's what I learned: when you stop begging to be seen, you start seeing yourself. And once that happens, they can't erase you anymore, not with words, not with wills, not with silence. Applause rose quiet at first, then building until the room felt alive again. When the event ended, Leah hugged me hard. "You did it," she whispered. "You turned their cruelty into something that saves people." I smiled. It's not revenge anymore. It's reclamation. Later that night, I came home to a still apartment. The city hummed below my window, soft and steady. On the counter, the old photo of my 10th birthday lay beside a new one, a picture from the event earlier that day. Me, Leah, and Denise standing under that banner. 3 women who refused to disappear. I made tea chamomile my ritual now and sat by the window. The scar on my leg still ached sometimes, especially when it rained. But it was a reminder, not a wound. Proof of survival, not victimhood. My phone buzzed once more, an unknown number. I didn't answer. Then it buzzed again, and a voicemail appeared. It was my father. His voice trembled. "Your mother's not well. She says she wants to see you. To apologize." I stared at the phone for a long time before pressing play again. "Please. He said she keeps saying she just wants to explain." I deleted it. Some doors don't need reopening. Some explanations come decades too late. The next morning, I slipped the last of my legal papers into a binder marked "Case Closed." Then I opened a blank folder beside it and labeled it Quiet Strength Foundation. Leah had offered to help with the launch. Denise had volunteered pro bono counsel. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about prevention. For every daughter left on hold while her family comforted someone else's tears. As sunlight crept through the blinds, I whispered to the empty room. This is what healing sounds like. Not applause, not apologies, just peace. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. 6 months later, the city had changed, or maybe I had. Portland's endless gray had finally broken into a soft spring, the kind that smelled like renewal instead of rot. My apartment, once cluttered with reminders of survival hospital bills, legal binders, half-folded apologies, was now lined with framed photos of women who'd written to me through Quiet Strength Foundation. One of them, a nurse from Ohio, had messaged, "Your story gave me the courage to walk out after 23 years of gaslighting." Another wrote, "I finally called 911 for myself." I printed every message not out of vanity, but as proof that silence could be repurposed, weapon-turned-shield wound-turned-map. I still worked in design part-time freelancing from home, but my real work was this foundation teaching women how to document, how to keep receipts, how to reclaim names on leases, wills, and accounts. Denise hosted a legal workshop every other Friday. Leah coordinated community therapy circles. We didn't fix people's families. We gave them language to stop being erased by them. One evening, as we packed for another event, Leah glanced up from her laptop. "You ever hear from her again?" she asked. I knew who she meant. I shook my head. "Just once," I said quietly. "A letter. No return address." "What did it say?" I smiled thinly. She wrote, "I hope one day you understand why I had to choose your sister." That was it. Leah winced. "And what did you do?" "I filed it under evidence of freedom," I said. Then I shredded it. The first anniversary of the crash came quietly. I didn't visit the hospital. Instead, I drove to the edge of Lake Oswego, the property now legally mine again. The house was still empty, dust thick on the windowsills. For a long time, I stood in the doorway, breathing in the faint scent of cedar and old paper. I hadn't decided whether to sell it or turn it into something else. Then it hit me, maybe Quiet Strength needed a home that wasn't virtual. A physical space. A place where women could walk in bruised or broken or just tired and not have to prove they were hurting. By summer, renovations had begun. I kept the structure intact but opened the walls, let the light in. Denise joked it was poetic justice rebuilding on a foundation they once tried to steal. The first open house was small but loud with laughter. Local volunteers brought food. Leah played soft piano, and when the first guest, a trembling woman in her 40s, stepped through the doorway whispering, "I don't even know why I'm here," I simply handed her tea and said, "Because you survived." In September, an email arrived from a journalist who'd covered my court case. "We're doing a 1-year retrospective. Can we interview you for the piece?" I hesitated. Then I wrote back, "Only if we focus on recovery, not revenge." The segment aired a week later. The camera caught me standing outside the new center, sunlight cutting through the trees. The reporter's voice narrated, "What began as one woman's cry for help has become a sanctuary for hundreds." Clara Weston, founder of Quiet Strength, teaches others how to protect their autonomy and their peace. When it aired, Mom called again. I didn't answer, but I saw the voicemail later, her voice faint, older, thinner. "You look happy," she said. "I suppose that's something." I didn't save that one either. By winter, the walls of the new center were covered in notes from visitors. Short confessions scrawled on paper butterflies. "He can't silence me anymore." I finally stopped apologizing. I called my lawyer today. Every week we pinned up more. Healing multiplied in ink. One night, Leah caught me staring at them for too long. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I just never thought peace would look so ordinary." She smiled. "That's the point. It's not dramatic. It's sustainable." Outside, snow began to fall thin and quiet, frosting the city in silence again. But this time I didn't flinch at the quiet. I welcomed it. When the lights dimmed and the last volunteer left, I stood alone in the hall. My reflection shimmered faintly in the glass door. Not the woman who once begged to be heard, but the one who no longer needed permission to speak. I whispered into the empty air. "You asked if I was dying?" "Mom, I wasn't. I was just becoming someone new." And for the first time, the echo didn't hurt. It healed. Outside, the snow turned to soft rain, steady cleansing. The lights of quiet strength glowed behind me, warm and alive. I locked the door, pulled my coat close, and stepped into the night. The city was hushed, but my footsteps sounded certain. Each one proof that survival isn't the opposite of breaking. It's what happens when you decide the crash wasn't the end of your story. And I was still writing mine. Spring came again, and with it, the hum of possibility. The Quiet Strength Center had outgrown the old Lake Oswego house. We'd added a legal clinic, a small therapy wing, and an art room filled with soft light, a space where survivors painted their way back to color. The foundation had become something real, something alive. Every week, new faces arrived, women, men, even grown children of narcissistic parents who just wanted to understand how to break the pattern. Sometimes they'd ask me to tell my story, and I always hesitated. Then I'd say the same thing I called from the ER once. I begged for help, and my mother asked if I was dying. It turns out I wasn't. I was being reborn. The words always landed the same way, with silence first, then the slow nods of people who understood too well. One morning, Denise called with news. "It's official," she said. "The DA's office concluded the fraud review. They won't press charges because of restitution, but Vera and Lydia are barred from holding any financial accounts under joint ownership for 10 years. I let that sink in. It wasn't prison, but it was punishment, a long, quiet one. "So they're free," I said softly. "Legally, yes," she replied, "but freedom's not about law, it's about conscience." I smiled faintly. "Then they're still serving time?" A few weeks later, Leah brought a box of donations to the center. Among the envelopes and checkbooks, one letter caught my eye. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was familiar, sharp, deliberate. I opened it carefully. "Clara," it began, "I see the headlines. I see what you've built. I'm angry, but not for the reasons you think. I'm angry because you turned what was meant to break you into something beautiful. And now no one looks at me the same. Maybe they shouldn't. I hope one day you'll remember that I did love you. I just didn't know how to show it without controlling you." There was no signature, but I knew it was Mom. I folded the letter once, then twice, and placed it under the framed mission statement of Quiet Strength. "You cannot heal where you are still being hurt." That was her final message, and this was mine. A year after the verdict, I returned to the courthouse for a different reason. This time, it wasn't to stand as a plaintiff, but as a guest speaker for a panel on financial coercion and emotional abuse. The same courtroom where I'd once trembled now felt smaller, lighter. When it was my turn to speak, I stepped to the podium and looked out at the rows of faces, judges, lawyers, advocates. The system can punish theft, I began, but it doesn't always recognize the kind that takes years to notice. The kind where love becomes currency and silence becomes collateral. I'm here because I stopped treating endurance like loyalty. Afterward, a young law student approached me. "Ms. Weston," she said shyly, "my mom used to say I was too sensitive, that I overreacted when things hurt. Listening to you made me realize that sensitivity isn't weakness. It's data." I smiled. That's the smartest thing you'll ever learn. That night back at home, I lit a candle by the window. The rain outside was soft, not a storm this time, just a rhythm. My scar ached faintly when the weather changed, but it no longer pulsed with memory. It just reminded me that bones heal stronger at the fracture. I opened my laptop and drafted the final page of my journal, not for publication, not for anyone else, just for me. They thought survival was silence. That being ignored meant I'd stay invisible. But what they forgot is that silence has an echo, and when it finds its voice, it doesn't whisper. It roars. I closed the laptop, took a sip of tea, and felt something I hadn't in years, the luxury of stillness without fear. A week later, I stood on the steps of the center, watching the evening light stretch across the lake. Leah joined me, her hands tucked into her coat pockets. "You ever think about seeing them again?" she asked. "No," I said, "but sometimes I think about thanking them." She tilted her head. "For what?" "For teaching me everything not to become." Leah chuckled softly. "That's the most Clara thing you've ever said." We stood there in comfortable silence as the lights of the center flickered on, one by one. The sign glowed faintly in the dusk, Quiet Strength Foundation for those who refuse to disappear. That night, I wrote one last entry in my story journal, the one I'd started the day after the verdict. If you're reading this and you've ever begged to be heard, if you've ever been told your pain was too inconvenient, this is for you. The people who ignored your cries don't define your worth. The ones who left you bleeding don't get to own your healing. You are not dramatic. You are not difficult. You are the proof that survival is a language and silence is just the first draft. I closed the book, set it beside the candle, and looked out into the night. The reflection in the glass didn't scare me anymore. I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I wasn't the fixer or the donor or the background character in someone else's drama. I was the author now, and for the first time, the story wasn't about pain. It was about legacy. The quiet outside wasn't emptiness. It was peace, hard-won, steady, real. And as the rain finally stopped, I whispered to the woman in the glass, "You made it."